Hello everybody, Roger Weafer here. Another bout of how to become a better magician. I had a few things designed, or at least in mind, to talk about today. To add to the earlier videos, I mentioned catalogs quite a bit, and back in my day, the Tannen's catalog out of New York looked like any other book you might imagine, but filled with 1,000 tricks, maybe more, including books, illusions. It had sections on card magic, rope magic, coin magic, comedy magic, silk magic, stage, platform, and close-up. Okay? You would pay $2.50 to get the catalog, and this is a very old one. Let me see, what is the year of this? Actually, this is 1989. That's old for some of you, but the 80s aren't that far away. But on the cover was Doug Henning, who actually at that point was already disappearing from the scene of magic. And when magic was being proclaimed basically dead in Hollywood and Vegas and everywhere else, this young man came up out of the flower power era of the early 70s and set the world on its ear. Mr. Doug Henning. This represents a generation just a little bit before mine. He was older than I, but needless to say, I had the long hair, wore a top hat, and was, doing magic for all my friends in school and stuff. And but anyway, just to mention catalogs, these days I'm sure everything is online. So that's really good for them because they don't have to mail you a book anymore. Think about that one. But the great thing about that was, no matter where you were, you carried that book with you. And I used to spend a lot of time going through the catalog to figure out how the tricks were done. And often I came up with a method of my own that was different from theirs, but worked just the same. Another quick mention that I failed to mention in books of the very important, ultimately important variety is the Greater Magic Library. It used to be called the Greater Magic Library at one point because it was 5 volumes like the Tarbell course, which eventually went to 8, and could be found in a lot of libraries at the time. This is a Kaufman and Greenberg new edition that I want to say came out in the late 90s or middle 90s. Anyway, another must-have book. Most of the books, they always tell you to do the stuff that's you. The big question that all of us try to answer our entire life is, who am I? Well, it's a little easier when you're young because you have your friends and they are a group of people that will grow up while you do, and they will be your personification of who you are at the time. Many of these things will return later on in life, you'll find, because back in the day I was a big Led Zeppelin fan, and they never ceased to come back again and again and again in popularity. And of course I played guitar, and couldn't sing though. And but anyway, who you are is how your friends and family see you. Not necessarily family, because family has a tendency to always see you in your worst light, right? You can never do anything to impress your family. But your friends now, they're impressible. And I can ask you, What is it about you that impresses your friends? Are you the comedian? Are you the guy that pulls, pranks on people? Those people get less popular, by the way, as time goes on, because pranks get very old. But maybe you're the serious guy. I was a big reader, as you know, and the kids actually called me the professor, when I was in school. Couldn't believe that now. But I use big words, I always have. If something was atrocious, I said it was atrocious. I knew words like pantomime and misdirection, sleight of hand, legerdemain, like I said, prestidigitation, all of these things, I knew, and they were part of my vocabulary. And an important thing about reading is that what you like to read affects your attitudes about everything. I was also super into sci-fi. I read Heinlein. I had several that I really thoroughly enjoyed reading. Ayn Rand, Fountainhead, those were fantastic books to me because they stretch the imagination. The other thing that I loved as a kid were the black and white horror movies from the 30s and 40s. Dracula, Frankenstein, the werewolf, the mummy, the creature from the Black Lagoon. And in a lot of ways, those movies still hold up and are better than a lot of the junk that's on TV now, believe it or not. The only thing that's changed is how much gore is applied. But that's who I was. So when I read the description of Zombie, the floating ball in Tannen's Catalog of Magic, I immediately perceived a performance of that in my mind, which kind of went to the Frankenstein kind of days. And in high school, I actually did the trick, the floating ball, which, like I said, you can now find on Magic by Roger. Please go look at it. I think you'll enjoy it. The ball came in two halves. Aluminum, heavy aluminum, okay? Sat on a little base. I immediately went to work on a Frankenstein kind of idea. The performer enters wearing a lab coat, which my grandmother had to hand sew for me because there were no outlets that we could find that actually had even used ones. And of course they would have been badly stained, I imagine. But she actually pulled out the sewing machine, and she was a mighty fine seamstress. But anyway, I had a lab coat. Sitting on this side was a machine. Sitting on a table, side table, were two halves of the ball and a jar, which looked like it had a brain in it. The machine was actually an old tube radio. Actually, it was not that old when I was a boy, but it had quit functioning. And my dad was going to throw it out on the street. So I asked for it. I took the back off of it, and I turned it face down on a tray and added some Christmas lights attached to a battery, which I knew how to do from reading science magazines and Life and that kind of thing, and put a piece of metal tubing in the center and mounted the zombie ball base to it. And so I walked on, gave a little spiel, which I still remember to this day. Took tongs and put the ball in, the brain in half the ball, put the ball together, walked over solemnly to the machine, set it on there, flipped the switch and let the bulbs go. Then showing the handkerchief on both sides, covered the ball, and the ball took up and took off straight into the air. As the routine progressed, the ball would become less and less under my control and would start to pull me around the stage until, in one final leap, I was able to grasp the ball from escaping and take my bow. The music I used was a very heavy metal piece by Iron Butterfly called the Iron Butterfly Theme. Why am I telling you all this? Because That is who I was, you see. And who you are directs the kind of magician you'll be. If you're a smart ass, people aren't going to like your tricks. It's that simple. You got to be a likable guy. A lot of times people get into magic for the wrong reason. They get into magic because they think they'll be superior because they're able to fool their friends. And a lot of catalogs are sold in the backs of comic books and stuff back in the day. Still in magazines you'll find. Be the life of the party. Be the hit of the decade. Fool and amaze all of your friends with marvelous feats of magic, putting you in a supreme being type of personality. But I would tell you, take your basic personality and fashion it after one of the Hollywood stars that is popular. Okay? Take Harry Anderson. If you don't know who he is, look him up on the internet. He based his character on a con man. Why? Because he actually did the 3-card Monte on a cardboard box for a living in New York City. Later on, he appeared on Night Court, telling you the success that he had as an actor for his character. Except in that case, he was a judge. Hey, you couldn't possibly be a crooked judge, right? So, the thing is that magicians copied Harry Anderson's character, many doing his patter exactly the way he did it, doing exactly the same tricks that he did. But nobody remembers any of them. They only remember the original Harry Anderson. Okay? That's very important to know. A copy is still a copy. And the original is saved and put in a safe for time immemorial. The copies eventually wind up in the garbage bin. Passed around for a little while and then forgotten. Okay? People copied Doug Henning with his long hair and his bell bottoms, you know. But it didn't work for them like it worked for Doug Henning. He was an original. Harry Anderson was an original. Cardini. There's an old video from the 40s, I believe, maybe the 50s, of Cardini doing his act. Look him up on YouTube. There were thousands of imitators that copied him. Young boys dressing up like him and pretending to be drunk on stage. Can you imagine doing that today? But it happened back then. Shannon, C-H-A or Channon, C-H-A-N-I-N, started the Dove Act craze. The doves out of the handkerchiefs. Magicians used to produce pigeons and bunny rabbits. He was the first to use the lightweight dove. And his act was copied all around the world. But he looked like a James Bond kind of guy. See, I would rather look like James Bond than do an act with doves and be a copy of Shannon's act, Jack Shannon. So find a character that you like, that you can live with, and groom that character until it is who you see in your own mind. So I'm going to sign off for now. This has already gone on longer than I wanted it to. So I hope that you got something out of this. Like and share. And I'll see you next time on How to Become a Better Magician. Roger Weafer, signing off.